Welcome back to another Axe Family video. Today we're talking about how you can sell your car for more money than what you bought it for. Pretty much every single car that I have owned, I've either broke even or I've made profit off of what I bought it for and sold it for. And if you have a car right now and you're like, man, I'd really love to sell this car. I'm trying to learn how to, sell it for as much money as I can. Well, there are tips and tricks that you can get to be able to sell your car for as much as you can. But in order to really make a profit off of your car, it's all about the amount you buy the car for. So you can't really go back in time and buy your car for cheaper, but looking to the future, if you really want to have cars be a good investment, which generally, thinking of investments, cars are not a good investment, especially if you buy a brand new car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses a ton of its value. And so buying and selling used cars is actually a better investment than buying a new car. But in general, most people will buy a car, whether it's new or used, and then they will never get their money back from it. However, it is possible if you do it right, if you have some patience, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. The first car I ever bought, I got from an auction that was advertised in the newspaper. I ended up buying the car for $400, and I drove that car around. It was a Chevy Cavalier. It was my first car, so I beat it up a little bit, and 4 years later, I sold the car for $400. So 4 years of driving and having a car that I, learned on, and it was safe to be in, and then I was able to sell it for the exact amount I bought it for. I thought that was a pretty good deal. And then from there, I just kept moving up. I got a Volkswagen turbo diesel Jetta, and I bought that. I had it for 6 months and I ended up selling it for $1,500 more than what I bought it for. There was a Toyota Tacoma that we had, a white one, and when we sold that, we sold it for $2,000 more than what we bought it for. So it's definitely doable, and the trick is being patient. If you're in a situation where like, man, we really need a car right now, then you're less likely to get a really good deal on it. But if you think ahead and you start planning, okay, I think I might need a car here in the next year, that's when you want to start doing your research. So I like to buy off of Craigslist. That's where I've bought pretty much all of my cars, but there are other places online where you can buy used cars. I never buy from a dealership, and the only key to that is that you need to know some mechanical knowledge. You need to know about the car enough to check it out and to make sure that it is functioning properly. And the workaround, if you don't know anything about engines, you can always bring or hire someone who does. And a lot of mechanics, if you go and talk to them and say, hey, I have this car that I'm looking at, I'll pay you $50 or $100 to come and check it out. If you're really serious about buying it and you think it's a good deal, then that would be worth it to spend that money to have the mechanic look it over and inspect it, and that will just give you some more confidence. There is a window of time where I typically try to buy cars. Typically, I won't buy a car that has less than 100,000 miles on it. And a lot of people are like, whoa, that's a lot of miles. Well, really, there's this window where the value of the car doesn't change too much. And for me, I've found that that window is somewhere between 100,000 miles and 200,000 miles. I try to get it between like 120,000 miles to 175,000 miles. And really what that means is I try to buy it on the lower end, and then I try to sell the car before it reaches the higher end. And typically if you do that, you can sell the car for more than what you bought it for. Also, there's a lot of maintenance that's required. So a lot of vehicles need like their timing belt changed and a lot of things like that. And so if you look at the car that you want to get, you research it and you figure out, okay, this is about the time that it should be done. So when you're going to look at a car, that's one of the questions you want to ask. And if it has that done, then go ahead and get it. If it doesn't have that done, then you're gonna have to add that to your expense. So really you're trying to find a car that has really low maintenance expenses during that window. So if you can buy a car that has, they just got brand new tires, they just got brand new brakes, and you're like, sweet, I'm not gonna have to do that, and I could potentially sell this car before I have to replace those items. And then when those items are getting, to where they're like 25% left or so, then you can think about selling the car. And a lot of people don't think when they're buying a car that, oh yeah, I have to do all of these other things that are going to cost more money. And so you want to be thinking like that. You want to go into the business deal of like, okay, I want to make sure I get a car that's set up really well so that I don't have a lot of expenses in the period of time that I own the car. The other trick is really not holding onto cars tightly. So you need to get to a point where like, okay, the car is functioning really well. I've had it for a while. It has served me well. And now it's time to see if somebody will buy it. At that point, you're not like, man, I have to get rid of this car. But you're at a point where it's kind of that sweet spot where you're like, man, everything's kind of going well. That's a good time to actually sell your car, because if you keep going, eventually there's going to be a problem. And that's not the time to sell a car. And also then you would have to put money into fixing it and then try to sell it. So once you're in a spot where you're like, man, my car's really functioning well, I'd be okay if I, sold it for this amount of money. So let's say you bought the car for $1,000 and you're like, I would be super happy if somebody bought this car for $2,000. Like that would be awesome. I basically doubled my money and I got to drive a car for a while. So you would create a post on Craigslist or wherever it is. You would put the asking price for $2,000, and you wouldn't put or best offer in there. You just put $2,000. You don't have to say firm, but you would try to get really good quality pictures of the car as well. So whether you can take really good quality photos or somebody you want to have really good photos. You also want to detail the car, so clean it really well, and you want to overdo it on the photos. You want to get photos of everything, and then you want a long description. So you got to really put some work into the ad so that when people come to it, they have everything they need right there, and it's basically, why would you not buy this car? Like, these are all the great things of it. And then I typically try to say, like, here are all the pros, and then here are some cons about the car. And the cons are usually things that aren't that big of a deal. And so when they're reading through the cons, they're like, oh, that's fine, that's fine. And so really they're not cons, they're just kind of like a neutral point. And so that really overemphasizes the positive things. And it's also showing that you are being honest. Like, you don't want to lie to people. If there is something wrong with the car, like, you should tell them. But you should also tell them all the things that are great about the car and all the things that are functioning really well and the things that you've done to improve the car. And that will up its value. You really want to communicate the value of the car to the person. And it's not just about what the car provides as far as like its functions inside, but what does the car provide to that person emotionally or practically in their life. And you can say like, hey, I took this car like over the past like 10 times last year because I had to work on the other side and there was a bunch of snow, and this car did amazing in the snow, and I haven't had any problems. Like, and I've driven this car on the freeway a ton, so a lot of the miles are freeway miles. Whatever it is about the car, the value that it provided to you, you want to share that with them, and they're gonna be like, yeah, that's what I'm really looking for. Like, I want a car that has low gas miles and that will be reliable and get me to and from work, or will be able to drive on the freeway fine. And so really communicate that value. You're just adding words in there. You're not actually changing anything to the car, but you're adding value to the purchase by giving them words that is speaking to their emotions of what they're looking for. And so if you have a really good ad, then you would just let it sit there. And someone might say, hey, would you take $1,800 for the car? And someone might really lowball you, and you can ignore those people, or you can ask them like, hey, what about $1,500? And if it gets to a price where you're like, man, like, this person is willing to buy the car for $1,500 and I bought it for $1,000, why don't I just sell it? And so you really need to be in a place where you're not stressed with time, you're not pressed to sell it quickly, but you have the freedom to be able to do that. And usually that's where the good deals happen. And now when you're thinking about buying a car, you need to also think in mind of who is this car going to be for next. And you want to buy a car that is going to have a great resale value. I typically will buy a Tacoma if I'm looking for like a mid-size truck. If I'm buying a car, it would be a Subaru. So recently, Taylor and I, we were looking for a car, and I started to do some research, and typically I'll take like almost a month of doing research and trying to figure out the market of what the car is we're looking at and kind of the price ranges. And that way when I quickly hear a deal, I can say like, okay, does it have this, this, and this? What's the price? And then I know like, okay, this might be a good deal or it's worth looking at. And so jumping into the game, you really have to invest in what does the market look like right now. And all that means is you need to be looking at a lot of other ads. If you have a car you're selling, look at other cars that are the same as yours and see what they're going for. Or if there's a car specifically that you're looking at, then set a search criteria inside of Craigslist, and then you can actually turn on an alert. And so anytime a car pops up in that setting, it will send you an email and it'll say, hey, here's another car that's for sale, and you can go check it out. And typically when those deals happen, if you have like the 3 things you're looking for of like, you know, it has to be in this mile range, like it has to have the timing belt replaced, and it has to be a 4-door. And if you get an email and it pops up and it has all these things, and then your other item would be it has to be in this price range. If it has all these things, then immediately what I do, I don't even look at the ad, like I don't read through it. If I have a tiny glimpse of like, okay, this car is interesting, I send an email. I try to be the first person that emails that person, because if they post it on Craigslist and then I get a notification and then I look at it and I send them an email and say, hey, I'm really interested in your car, you know, could you tell me more about it, or is it still available, or something simple like that. Now you're the first person in line to go look at that car, and then you can go look at the ad, see if it has everything you're looking for. If they respond back to you and it's actually a car you don't want to get, then you can be like, hey, never mind. But if it is a car that you want to get and it is a good deal, then typically it's going to go really fast, and now you're first in line to go look at it. So that's why I send the email right away, and that has helped me a ton. So Taylor and I were looking for a Subaru, and we ended up finding a Subaru. We drove all the way over to the west side of the state. It was about a 2-hour drive, but we ended up getting a great deal for the car. Just stopped to fuel up the truck. And because I have done this so much, it only took me about a week of researching before we really decided to pull the trigger on getting a car. And the car had a couple mechanical problems on it. It had a broken CV boot, and there were a lot of people that the owner said were turning down the car because of that issue. And I was able to spend, you know, an hour of my time and a little bit of money, and I fixed that, and now the car is doing awesome. We just bought a car.
We just bought a car.
Subaru. There it is. Taylor's gonna drive it.
See you soon.
All right, see ya. So if you have a mechanical experience, or if you know someone, or if you're willing to learn, then you are often going to get a better deal. And so if you get a price point for the purchase of the car, you are more likely going to sell the car for more than what you bought it for. It's all about that purchase price. So hopefully this was helpful. It was a little all over the place, but we ended up getting a Subaru recently, and we're super excited about it. And we also have our Tacoma truck that we've had for a number of years now, and its value is still holding because of the price we bought it for. And that's a whole nother story. I guess I could tell you real quick, but we basically bought the car in Canada. We bought the truck in Canada, and because of the conversion rate from American dollars to Canadian, we were able to save about $2,000 on the price, and then also the price that they were offering was way lower than what the prices that were available in the US. And so we drove up to Canada. Because it was manufactured in North America, we didn't have any importation tax, and that saved us a ton of money. And so we really are sitting at a great point with our truck where we could sell it easily right now with over 200,000 miles on it and still get our money's worth out of it. So it's really about that purchase price. If you are trying to sell your car right now, go through some of the steps that I said, but think about with your next purchase, try to get a used car that's in good condition, and then you're more likely able to sell your car for more than what you bought it for. If you can find a car that's been sitting in a garage for a while, or if there's a senior citizen that has a car that they haven't really driven it, a lot of times those are good deals. If you have people who you know personally, a lot of times you can get a good deal on the purchase of a car. So really take your time and look for it, because it is out there. Never buy a car off of a lot. That's just my opinion. It's not worth the money. But if you do have the mechanical knowledge, or you know someone that does, definitely put that into the process of buying the car. And so hopefully that was helpful for you guys. If you're new to the channel, my name is Cody, and this channel is called Axe Family because it's basically my life and the story of my family as we're going through the journey of life. And we recently just bought a home, and so I'm starting to share that with you guys and working on this property. And we just got an additional car, and there's just a lot of changes happening. So I'm just taking you guys along the journey, and push the subscribe button all the way in if you haven't done so already, and click the bell so you get notified when we post new videos. And I will be excited to see you in the next one. Hats off to you.